Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
yes, Kenny Squared. And we have got some great stuff to get into and talk about today. Kenny, how you doing?
I personally love this weekend because the Yankees are here in Cleveland. It's also been an interesting one because um, Friday's game, I wore Giancarlo Stanton jersey, and he hit 2 home runs. Last night we went to the game. I wore Garrett Cole jersey, and he had an amazing game. So today I'm wearing Judge. We'll see what happens.
I was going to say, how many jerseys do you have? You have the whole team. Okay, well let's start there because I want to go around the horn with baseball because we're getting ready to wind up in a few more days, the first month of the season. And I think it's just been spectacular. But let's stay with the Yankees. So you mentioned Stanton. I loved his second home run. That because that to me is more natural for him, where he hits it to right field, like to right center. Same with Judge because Judge's stance is a little bit more open, but Stanton, he still kind of has an old school closed, stance. And so his natural power, I think, is to right field. I thought that was a really good sign. What did you think?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like this week has been good. Obviously, they've won 4 out of 5. So that's obviously a good sign. But really, like, I look at how they've done the last, especially this series in Cleveland.
Right.
Like, I think their turnaround, like, they won Monday, or not Monday, Tuesday. It was a very bizarre game. We'll get more into Lucas Licky in a little bit. He actually got the win on Tuesday. But, like, they were still very, like, anemic, like when it comes to hitting in general. They won based off of a wild pitch with the bases loaded and a bases loaded walk. So it didn't
Right.
really feel like a huge win. But then Thursday, when they're down 3-0 in the first inning, the last couple weeks, it seemed like 3-0 turned into like 10-0. It seemed like there was just no hope. And then a couple of innings later, you got the big hit by Gleyber Torres to tie it, and then Odor gives them the lead, and then eventually the win. And then same thing Friday, like down 3-0 in the first. They come back in the second. Hicks hits a home run, Odor 2-run home run, just like that. It's tied. And to me, like that tells me that they're really starting to believe that it doesn't matter whether they're down or up. They feel like they can win. And something else I think that's kind of interesting is I was kind of skeptical about the whole Odor thing, but he's been really clutch. He has 8 hits so far with the Yankees. 4 of them have either tied the game or gave them the lead. And then also 2 other things to me were really, really interesting that I saw. They were asking Darren O'Day, like, what do you feel like Odor brings to the table? And he said, yeah, like he's a really tough guy. Like we know he's tough because he punched a guy in the face. And then Eric Krax kind of tweeted out something similar where he said that it seemed like the Yankees were very like business and professional like, where Odor kind of brings like that swagger, that like passion, that energy. So it seems like they've kind of turned a corner since he's been there, and now that he's kind of in the mix a little bit, he's started a lot more now. I believe he's batting 4th or 5th in the lineup tonight. So it's one of those things where I was kind of skeptical, but I kind of see where he fits into this team. He may not hit very well. He may not like give you 25, 30 home runs, but I think his presence in the locker room will kind of help fire up the other guys a little bit more.
Yeah, I've always liked him as a player. It seems like he's got that reputation though because he had that brawl, and I know he's been involved in a couple of other bench clearing things. But the Yankees have always kind of been like that though, very very workmanlike, very businesslike, and so but they've always had 1 or 2 players that kind of helped with that. I mean, even Jeter was kind of their spiritual leader when he was in his younger days, but I want to go back to Gleyber Torres for a second. He took a lot of heat here in the New York papers, but online for a lack of hustle, and he seemed to own up to it a little bit, saying that he was frustrated. What's the deal with him?
Yeah, I don't know. He's been like, I feel like it's one of those things where everything kind of snowballs because he hasn't been hitting at all. Batting under 200, every single big opportunity he's come up short. And I think it's also been spilling a little bit into his play, as he's been just like defensively, he's been horrible. It's been a big struggle. And I think once that little chopper, he's like, oh, this again. But I hope that there's the start of a little bit of a breakthrough for him, because he had a 3-hit game in the game Thursday, including the game tying hit. So I guess we'll see how he reacts and see kind of what he does over the next few days here.
That's still the steal of all time. Trading Chapman for him. Cubs got what they wanted, though. They got the championship, but then the Yankees signed Chapman, and they have Torres. They re-signed Chapman. That's still the steal of all time. And I remember I was telling you, yeah, that stuff never happens. Because I think the only time I had remembered before that, it started to happen a little bit more often, where you trade someone mid-season and then the same team gets them back. Ricky Henderson years ago, when Oakland traded him to Toronto, and Toronto wound up winning a championship. Sure enough, that offseason, Oakland got him back. But I hope Torres starts to hit. So overall, it sounds like you're feeling really, really, really good about the Yankees. And you know, it's so funny how baseball, this is what I love. One of the things that I love about baseball, I know you do too, is that things can change like that just week to week.
Yeah. Because also like the pitching has been really good this week. Still not a ton of but like I think it's great signs that both Herman and Montgomery, who both had really rocky first innings, pitched to the 6th inning. I think that's really big. Also, Garrett Cole has been absolutely spectacular. I told you yesterday this stat. He had last night's line 7 innings, 1 run, 3 hits, no walks, 11 strikeouts. He is now just the second player in his first 5 starts to have 50 strikeouts or more and 3 or fewer walks. The only other guy is Kurt Schilling. So like,
good company,
he's impressive.
Yeah. I'm sorry though, he's not deGrom, but we'll get to him in a second. But then again, nobody is. So feeling good about the Yankees. I want to ask you about a couple of teams who stay in the American League for a little bit. The Oakland A's, and you know I'm going to say this, I'm not that impressed. Now I'll tell you, so now they've won 13 in a row. And I didn't realize this. I had to look this back up. In 2018, they had 97 wins. In 2019, they had 97 wins. And last year, they were on pace to have 97 wins. And if anything, that is just so consistent. And I think Bob Melvin is one of the guys that really doesn't get much credit. You don't hear his name much when you ask about top managers. But there's 2 things with the A's. I couldn't name you 2 or 3 players. I couldn't name you more than 3 players on the A's, right? That's number one.
Yeah.
But number 2, even though it's only April, a 13-game winning streak is impressive, but until the A's win a playoff series here, it just doesn't impress me. I mean, what are your thoughts on the A's?
Yeah, I think first of all, they started out 0-7. So to come back and now they're 13-7 to me is really impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, it seems like every year they're really, really good. Maybe this is the year that they don't have to, because there's been a few years where they've been stopped in the wild card game. Yankees a few times with that. Maybe this is the year that they actually win their division and they don't have to worry about it. But it still seems like every year, whether it's like them and the Twins, they always seem like they're really good, but then they never get to the championship series. I would say, and I guess we can mark this here on April 25th, if they were to make it to the championship series, I can see them winning the World Series. Because it's like that one stumbling block they finally get over. But I don't know. Like you said, I would have to see them win a playoff series.
Not if they play the Yankees in the championship series. They're not winning that.
That's true.
Well, listen, they're a fun team whenever they're, and that's the other thing, they're not on TV that much. I think it's because, whenever they show like a West Coast game, it's always like the Dodgers or the Padres. We'll get to them in a second, but it never seems to be like Texas and Oakland or something like that whenever they show a late game. But they just go about their business and they just do a great job in the regular season. I mean, certainly they're going to lose here soon, but I could see them getting another 97, 97 and up type season again. But to me, I'm just until they win a series in the postseason, wake me up then. Um, how about this team? I'm sure you peeked in on them, and I still have some of my Kansas City ties. Um, how about the Royals? And I think they're like 13-7, something like that, 12-7. They've gotten off to a really good start. I like what they did because they seem like they spent a little bit of money and they plugged in a few holes we hear with a few veterans. They picked up the guy from the Red Sox. And they had some good pitching coming up. What do you think about the Royals?
I think that the Royals, especially seeing them the first month or so, that might be like that team to actually stick. Because you know how like in April, like it always seems like the Mariners are like 20-7 and then they lose 1,200 games in a row. I feel like the Royals can actually stick, especially in a division where no one really seems like they really want it. Like the Indians kind of seem a little up and down. The White Sox are missing some key pieces and their pitching's kind of shaky. I think the Royals, especially if they can continue to build on that starting pitching, can really do a lot of great things. So I don't know. I'm excited to see them continue to do well because that'd be nice for them.
It would be. It would be. I think the White Sox are going to be the team in that division, though, when all is said and done. Up close there with Cleveland, how are my two ex-Mets doing out there, Ramirez and Rosario?
I don't remember seeing Ramirez in at all.
Oh, really?
But Rosario, yeah, Rosario is starting in center field, which I know he didn't really do that a ton with the Mets. He's doing all right, like as the top herald prospect he was a couple years ago. He's not reached that level, but he's pretty serviceable. Like he's been batting at top of the lineup, like 240 or something like that. So
Yeah,
could be worse.
yeah. The Mets had talked about for a couple of years moving him to the outfield, but I don't think he ever played a game out there with the Mets. So I guess the Indians pulled the trigger on that. I'm surprised that Ramirez is not playing because that's a guy that you would think would play every day. He was the one who got pushed by Adam Eaton, so he was playing,
Yeah.
But I'm surprised. I mean, a guy that young, you probably, and if you have a team that is probably rebuilding like the Indians are, you would think they play him every day. But so that's a little bit surprising. All right, so I'll give you my quick, 2 minutes on the Mets here, and then I want to ask you about the Dodgers and Padres. I'm not. So I do have one really major concern with the Mets, and first of all, I mean, it's not much to talk about with Jacob deGrom. He's getting to that point. For me, it's been more sustainable than Dwight Gooden and Matt Harvey. Certainly Matt Harvey, who had a good 2-year run, I would think. But Gooden had more than that. He was, 1985 was just unbelievable with Dwight Gooden. But, he's getting close to the Tom Seaver territory because he's going after some of Seaver's records. He almost got to 10 strikeouts in a row. And right now, in the same time frame, he's got a lower ERA than Tom Seaver in that same 5-year or so time frame that he's been with the Mets. It's he's just unbelievable, and he's just getting better and better every year. And he's still in the 8th and 9th inning throwing 101 and 100 that late in the game is just unbelievable. And so it's been fun to watch him. And I think that, you just don't see him slowing down. He was really good last year as well. It was good to see the Mets get 4 runs, and it was a rare complete game, shutout. The one thing that concerns me with the Mets, and that's a big concern, is their defense. And here's why. You see, pitching will come around. With pitching, their pitching has been good. It has been great. Outside of deGrom, and Stroman had a not good game yesterday, but outside of those two, it's been okay. Familia actually looks really good out of the bullpen. So does Diaz, but the pitching will be fine because you've got other guys coming back. You've got Carrasco, you've got Syndergaard, you've got Seth Lugo. All will be back, right? So you've got some good reinforcements. Not worried about that. The hitting, Smith, McNeil, they'll hit. Conforto started to come around, hit a home run yesterday. They'll hit. I'm not too worried about that. It's their defense that's awful. And typically that doesn't get that much better unless you just put different players out there, and this is where the DH would have really served the Mets well, because Dom Smith really does not play a great left field, and JD Davis really doesn't play a great third base. So if you had a DH where you could rotate those guys in and out, and have Guillorme or Jonathan Villar more in the lineup, guys that are more steadier gloves, it would have served them really well maybe next year. But that concerns me because their defense really hasn't been well. Lindor doesn't phase me at all. He's starting to hit a little bit. It's going to take him some time. He's in a new league. He doesn't seem rattled. The fans aren't booing him, which I'm glad. As they booed Roberto Alomar, I think, after his first month or so, and Carlos Baerga.
Stanton got boozed earlier this year too.
I know. I don't. How I feel about it. So that's my quick thing on the Mets. I'm not concerned. I think that they'll be okay. It's just the defense, is that really concerns me. Let me ask you about Dodgers Padres. I know you followed that, and I think ESPN heard you, because that's the game, the Sunday night showcase tonight. And I think MLB had that on Friday night, and they had John Schmaltz and Matt Dishkurgan, if I pronounced his name right. So they had it like as a national game, but it came on so late. I stayed up and watched maybe the first inning, but it had a big game feel to it though. Like it felt like an October, game. What's your thoughts so far on the Dodgers and Padres? Mostly, the Dodgers and Tatis with Trevor Bauer yesterday. I don't know if you got to see some of that. What's your take a little bit on those two teams?
First, speaking of broadcast, very interesting debut by CC Sabathia, who will be on an MLB network talking with the Indians-Yankees game. I believe they're doing more like interview style. Should be interesting. You should probably check it out if you – well, actually, it probably won't be available because New York, but okay. So Dodgers-Padres, interesting stat. Tatis, first guy since Barry Bonds to have consecutive multi-home run games at Dodger Stadium. And Barry Bonds did that in 2002. So Tatis loves to hit against the Dodgers. Yeah. I love this rivalry because it seems like it's the best rivalry in baseball right now. Yankees, Red Sox kind of seems at times. Like I feel like the Reds and the Cubs, or not the Reds, the Cardinals and the Cubs are good, but not really now. I love this. I think it's great for baseball. I love Tatis showing up Trevor Bauer with like the close of the eye thing. But I also love Trevor Bauer's attitude about it, where he was like, I love that he did that. Like, bring that on. Because I would love for more guys to not retaliate by hitting guys with pitches, but to just be like, all right, well, let's have some fun with it. And I think that's something that baseball needs. Baseball needs more of like let's get away from just like guys staring at a home run and showing somebody up. So I got to hit the next guy. Like, you kind of get rid of the fights, even just in that mentality.
Yeah.
I'm still a little hesitant to call Tatis the face of baseball, as some people are, because he still hasn't even played a full season. I'm not saying he's not good. I'm not saying that he can't win MVP or anything like that. Just hold off on calling him like the greatest player right now. But I do love this. I think this is going to be fun.
I agree. I tell you, though, I was a little disappointed. No judging here, right? But my man Kershaw, who's a very, very powerful Christian, out there yelling curse words back at, one of the Padres players. Come on. Just ignore that, because he was trying to say he hit the catcher's hand intentionally. How do you do that? Come on. I'm sure he didn't, but. And then what the other guy was saying back to him, boy, oh boy, you don't have any respect for your elders there, It's like, this is Clayton Kershaw, but I guess he got ticked off that he was yelling at him like that. So, I agree. This is going to be fun. All right. Speaking of fun, let's shift from baseball, because we're having the time of our life here. And hopefully it's just started. What we had thought, what is today, April 25th? There's 11 games left in the regular season. Well, we have thought that we would be saying that our New York Knicks, who you and I have suffered with, and mostly in your lifetime, you really only had a very little taste. At least I saw a couple of championships, Well, at least I remember one. I barely remember the other one. But 34 and 27 at this point in the season. So anxious to hear your thoughts.
First of all, 9 in a row to me is something I thought I would only hear 9 losses in a row. So it's
They
really
had a lot.
it's really fun.
They had some long losing streaks over these last few years too.
Yeah. So like I think it's really been fun. First of all, Julius Randle, I was like 119% wrong with him. He's been an absolute monster, especially these last like during this winning streak. He seems unstoppable. And I think like I told you this yesterday, and I'm gonna say it here. It's still a stretch. I'm looking at the standings now. Knicks are 4 games back of the Bucks for 3rd place. I think if the Knicks pass the Bucks, which not a ton of time, but still like if they do that, I think you have to seriously consider Julius Randle for MVP. Like he's been that big for them, and unlike a lot of the other stars like Embiid, James Harden, LeBron James, a lot of these guys haven't played the entire season. Julius Randle is like a top 5 guy in minutes played. So I think that you have to at least consider that. He's a guy that's been there consistently. He's a big reason why the Knicks are in 4th place. I think this will be good, like, because I'm not still like, oh my gosh, like I have to make the Eastern Conference Finals or it's a bust. I think having home court advantage would be huge this year. But then also, even if they lose to, say, the Hawks or the Celtics, I think making the playoffs is such a big step for this team. And also, because I was at the beginning of the season when they said they're going to have 10 teams and they're going to do like the playing game, I was like, well, they make the playing game, that's fine. If they get above that and they just automatically are in the playoffs, it's going to be a lot of fun. It would be even more fun to see them go against the Nets in the 2nd round, even if they get absolutely destroyed. But I will add this caveat. Let's say they do beat like a team like Atlanta or Boston, who kind of seems like in and out-ish. They play the Nets. That's not an easy fight for Brooklyn, especially seeing that right now James Harden is still out. Kevin Durant just is coming back today. Kyrie, who knows what kind of mental state he's going to be at that time. So don't hold your breath, but they could beat the Nets. I don't know if they will, and I could be completely wrong, but you never know.
Well, listen, I'm going to include the Nets here, and obviously I don't know this. I'm just speculating. There's no team in the East, right? Whether you're talking about Nets, Celtics, Sixers, Hawks, especially, that are sitting around probably saying, we want to play the Knicks. They're probably like, man, we don't want these guys. Because the thing about all of the regular season games that the Nets and the Knicks played came down to the wire. The Knicks should have won a couple of those. The games with the 76ers so far came down to the wire. You know, they gave the Bucks a really tough time. And so they beat the Bucks, right, in one game. I think Giannis didn't play that game, but they still beat them. Listen, I want to go back to Julius Randle for 1 second and really talk about this whole team. I got to share this real quick with you. So the other night, I'm in the car with the game against the Hawks, and blessed enough to still have Sirius on the app. So I'm listening to the game on the way home. And I was listening to, you know me, I like to listen to the other team's announcers. So I'm listening to the Hawks announcers. I have no idea who they were. And they, Randall goes to the line, and you clearly hear on the radio the MVP chants. And so the play-by-play guy's like, yeah, listen to the fans saying MVP. They were clearly homers, both these guys, right? But the commentator says, you know, they're not that far off. And so the play-by-play guy stops in his tracks. It's like, what? He said, think about it. He said, this guy has been unbelievable. He said, who's a clear-cut MVP this year? He said, you know, Joel Embiid. And then he said, well, he's missed a lot of games. And, you know, James Harden, he's missed a lot of games. Chris Paul or Devin Booker, I think that's a different conversation. I think both those guys are legit. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is legit. Steph Curry, I think, is legit. But why can't you throw Julius Randle into that mix? This guy has been unbelievable. But real quick, where this team is winning, because he's clearly the leader, and he's clearly carrying it. But Derrick Rose has been unbelievable. Quickly has been unbelievable. Nerlens Noel has been unbelievable. Before he went out on COVID, Alec Burks, a journeyman NBA player, has been unbelievable. Reggie Bullock, who I was a little down on, firing up threes and missing them, he's found his touch. He's been awesome. I mean, RJ Barrett. I mean, you think about the improvement from his rookie year to now. Elfrid Payton. I mean, we can go on and on. Every single person on this roster is contributing in a big way. And so while it's mostly Randall, there's not a night that goes by where you don't see Derrick Rose get a big basket down the stretch, or quickly throwing up a three down the stretch that goes in. I mean, it's been great to watch. And it's hands down Tom Thibodeau's, coach of the year to lose. I mean, there's no way that he shouldn't be coach of the year. What he's done for the culture on his team is unbelievable. The only one close, speaking of the Hawks, I had to look this up the other day because the only one, because I was like, where did the Hawks come from, Because they all of a sudden have this great record as well. I guess them and the Knicks are tied, right? I think they have the same record now.
Yeah, but the Knicks are ahead technically, but
yeah. So since they fired Lloyd Pierce, who seemed like he was going to be a good coach, they've gone 18-6. So Nate McMillan, who stepped in, everywhere he's been a good coach. And so, he's not going to get coach of the year because it's a smaller thing, but he's done a remarkable job with the Hawks. I was like, they very quietly have been winning like crazy, so. Yeah. But I mean, listen, the Knicks have just been a joy. They're fun to watch. These games are close. And then they're like Toronto, who still has a core of a championship team there and are fighting for their playoff lives. I mean, it was close throughout with about 5 minutes left. The Knicks just took off, So they're learning how to close these games out, which, in the first part of the year, they weren't doing. So it's unbelievable. Yeah. It's fun to watch. It really is.
Yeah, and also their defense. They're still number one in opponents' points per game. They're top 5 in a lot of the defensive metrics as a team. I think that's also such a big thing, is like, because especially like watching the Toronto game, it seemed like they didn't score in the last 5 minutes. And like, that's huge. And especially like defense is what shines in the playoffs. That's why like you can have all the talented offense in the world, but like historically, top 10 defenses win a championship. I'm not saying the Knicks will win a championship this year, but having that core of defense to kind of lead you is going to be big. That's why I think the Nets are in trouble, because the guys haven't played together, but also they're not good at defense. So
I mean, it's a great point you just made. When you think about the NBA championships, even over our lifetime and through history, but even recently, while Golden State was known more for their offense, you had guys like Draymond Green, who's a phenomenal defensive player, and Andre Iguodala was on there. They played defense. The Cavs that year were great defense with the Lakers last year. So you're right. I mean, it's a core. We're not saying, hey, the Knicks are going to be a champions this year, but they're building a foundation, for them to be a championship team. You're absolutely right. Anyway, this is fun. And let's just keep it going. I think expectations are going to start to change here a little bit, right? Because people are going to start to expect, hey, now win a series here, which I don't know. I mean, it's fun. They got nothing to lose this year, though. So
yeah.
All right, let's wrap up with with one quick item and 2 players, because we think about. And we talk about in churches, right? God's timing, all the time. And all of us, right? Whether it's you, me, anyone in our family that we know, they've had to wait on things, right? And it's just, sometimes God can make things happen just like that. Sometimes, God's behind the scenes and he knows that, hey, not yet, not yet. So there's 2 players in baseball that really stood out, right? And one is with the Braves. And this is amazing. So Scott Kasmar. And so talk about, really, really waiting. His last game played was in 2008 in the major leagues, 2008. And he's waited exactly 12 years and 206 days. So almost 13 years before he got a shot and he got called up by the Braves to play back in the major leagues. That is such a phenomenal, phenomenal story of perseverance. They say he never missed a game in the minor leagues. He's kind of stayed at that AAA level. He bounced around through organizations, like he never went like to the Atlantic League or somewhere like that. He's just stayed like in farm systems, the Mariners, the Mets, the Padres. And they say all around he's just been this great guy. He's waiting to start. And so the Atlanta manager said that that's one of the best moments of his career to be able to have him called up and put him in a game. And so it just says something about God's timing. And this guy is so humble. How he's like, yeah, I have no bitterness, anything like that. I'm just glad to be here. He's 36 years old now. And so he's obviously, on the back end of his career. But imagine if he stays on the Braves all this year, and more than likely the Braves will be in the postseason, and he gets a taste of some postseason play and stuff like that. It's an amazing story, and it really, to me, it speaks to God's perseverance, patience, all the things that He teaches us to do, but we in the flesh we have a tough time doing. Now you have a similar story with the Yankees.
Yeah. So not as long, but Lucas Luetge is apparently a guy that the Yankees have had their eyes on for a couple of years, but he was with Seattle for a little bit. 2015 was his last appearance. He only got into one game, and then was a non-roster invite to spring training, especially in like a spring training where there was a lot of guys that were kind of on the fringe. Like you weren't sure if Davy Garcia was going to be there, Michael King, Jonathan Loaizaga, who actually saved last night's game, which he's been incredible. But then he makes the team right out of camp. 6 years out of Major League Baseball and really doesn't miss a step. Here's his numbers. He's 1-0. He won his first Major League game in, I believe his last win was in 2013. So I forgot the exact number of days, but almost 10 years.
Yeah.
1-0, 4.97 ERA. He's gotten into 7 games, 12 innings, given up 3 home runs. Not horrible. 13 walks or 3 walks and 13 strikeouts. So he has really good stuff. Has a really good curveball, and really there's been a few instances where Aaron Boone has put him in like the middle innings, kind of in high leverage situations, and he's done well. The biggest case was I guess that was it was either Thursday or Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday night. Yeah, it was Tuesday because Kluber went the first 4 2/3. Luetge comes in with the bases loaded, strands the guys, and then pitches the next 2 innings, and then ends up getting the win because the Yankees come back. So he's been really good. He's been one of those guys that's like very much that endurance. I believe he also battled a couple of injuries, which kind of seems like a little bit of a theme this year. You look at guys like Tyone, who's pitching today, Kluber, the White Sox pitcher Carlos Rondon, who had 2 major arm surgeries and then comes and pitches a no-hitter, was this close to a perfect game.
Yeah, amazing.
So I think it's one of those themes I love in baseball this year. It's like seeing those guys like overcome so much, because so often like people are just saying, oh, well, mail it in. But sometimes God tells you to keep going because you may not see that breakthrough right away, but God will make that happen.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. All right, we're going to get ready to wrap up. And these are great stories. I love them. And hopefully there'll be more of guys like that during the year. It's just, it's such a testament, But Johnny Vandermeer, right? Do you know who that is?
Name sounds familiar.
So he's the only records that may never be broken. I don't think this will ever be broken. Do you know what he did? He pitched
2 straight no-hitters.
2 straight no-hitters. So every time they mention his name all the time when the next start and somebody gets a base hit, inevitably usually in the first and second inning. Oh, Johnny Vandermeer's record is safe, right? That is amazing. That is amazing. All right. Well, hey, listen, we'll have more next week. Let's wrap up for now. Why don't you take us home?
All right. Well, enjoy the Yankees Indians game. But for now, this is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.